I like my job. I was not miserable, not burnt out, not underpaid, and I still had to leave. If you have ever felt that exact tension, this video will give you language for it because there is a specific discomfort most people never name, and that silence cost them years. Here's what confused me for a long time. Everything around me said, if you like your job, you have already won. So the fact that staying felt like slowing betraying myself did not make sense to me at all. I was not running from something bad. Trust me, I was not escaping a toxic environment or a terrible manager. In fact, I had great people, great work environment, but I was being pulled away by something I could not quite name at the time. And that absence of a clear villain made it harder to trust the signal. Because how do you tell someone or even yourself that you need to leave a job you actually like? Like most people think you're ungrateful or you're being dramatic or maybe you're restless in a way that needs fixing. But what if the signal is real and you're just missing the language to describe it? Here's what no one prepares you for. Enjoying your job does not automatically mean it's your future. That distinction changes everything once you understand it. Most people never separate those two things. So they stay and they wonder why success feels like a slow suffocation. I want to be really clear about something before we go deeper. I'm not saying you should leave a job you like. That is not the point of this video. I'm saying that if you are experiencing a specific tension where you like the work but you question the future, you need to understand that that tension is actually telling you something, because ignoring it does not make it go away. It just makes it more expensive over time. And let me be specific about my situation. So I worked in a hospital, general medicine department of a tertiary hospital back in Ghana. I enjoyed the work at the time. I genuinely did, as I'm saying. And I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed the structure that I had. I enjoyed the clarity of a clinical role where you could see the direct impact of your decisions. Nothing was obviously broken. I had great colleagues, the patients trusted me, and over time I had become sort of the unofficial IT person for the pharmacy directory because I had taught myself to code and I knew all this tech stuff. People wanted my help. So that felt really good being there. But every time I tried to picture myself 5, 10, 20 years ahead in that role, something felt off. Not painful, not urgent, just off. And that is the hardest discomfort to trust because nothing is broken. There is no clear moment where you can point to at the job and say, this is the problem. The problem is more subtle than that. And this is where most people stall. So you start telling yourself things like, other jobs, other people would kill for this job. I went to school for this. I should be grateful. Maybe I'm just restless. And you see, you hear these things from a lot of people, and you also think maybe you are just overthinking this whole thing. A lot of people hate their jobs, right? And you actually like yours. So I like mine. This is a privilege. These are some of the thoughts that run through your head. So instead of listening to that signal, you mute it with gratitude. And slowly, gratitude turns into a cage. Not because gratitude is bad. Of course, we all like gratitude and it's good. But because you're using it to override honesty. I did this for a long time, more than I want to even admit. I'd catch myself thinking about leaving, and then I'll catch myself thinking that thought and immediately feel guilty for thinking it. So I'd push it down, try harder, like show up more present. I want to be there. Longer hours to prove to myself that I was committed to the work. But the tension did not go away. It just got quieter, and quieter tensions are the most dangerous ones because you can ignore them for years, but they will still be hiding. Here's the distinction that changed everything for me, and I want you to pay attention. If you find yourself in a similar tension, pay attention to this. Enjoyment answers one question: do I like this right now? But alignment answers a different question: is this building the life that I want to live? Those are two different questions, right? And you can enjoy something with a low ceiling. You can like the day-to-day work and still feel boxed in by the identity it demands long term. Think of it like this. You can love being in a comfortable house, okay? And that does not mean it is the right house for who you are becoming. The house is fine. The rooms are pleasant. The kitchen works. Your friends like coming over. But if you are growing, the house is not growing with you, then staying in the house means choosing comfort over direction. That is fine. Some people make that choice and they are happy with it. But if staying in the house means accepting a smaller version of your future, then the comfort of the house becomes a trap. Not because the house is bad, but because you are outgrowing it. In my case, the hospital was that comfortable house. The work was meaningful, the structure was clear, the path was known. But as I spent more time coding on the side, as I started seeing the potential for technology to solve problems at scale in healthcare, the identity of pharmacist started to feel more like a ceiling, not a foundation. So I could be very good at pharmacy. In fact, I was becoming really good at pharmacy, but very good at something that no longer fits who you are becoming is not a long-term strategy. At least that's what I came to understand. When I finally got honest, the issue was not the hospital. The issue was that staying meant accepting a future version of myself that felt smaller than what I sensed I was capable of becoming. And that is terrifying to admit because it forces a question you do not yet have an answer to. If not this, then what? If I leave pharmacy, what am I? I spent 6 years studying for this. I sacrificed a lot to be good at it. And my family is really proud. My community saw me as successful, and there is a clear path for me. If I leave, I'm stepping off a ladder I spent years climbing, and I do not know where I am going to land. So most people avoid the question. They stay. They tell themselves that maybe the feeling will pass. Maybe next year will feel different. Maybe they just need a vacation. But here is what I learned. The feeling does not pass. The tension does not dissolve. It just gets quieter and you get better at ignoring it. And that costs more than you realize. Not just in money or time, but in the slow erosion of aliveness. You start saying yes to things you do not want because that is what your identity requires. You stop exploring because exploring does not fit the narrative you've committed to. So you shrink. Not dramatically, you do not have like a breakdown. You just gradually accept a smaller version of your own potential. And by the time you realize what happened, years would have passed. Let me say this clearly. Feeling this way does not mean you are broken. Again, feeling this way or this tension does not mean you are broken. And it does not mean you are ungrateful. And it definitely does not mean you need to quit tomorrow. It means you have hit what I call an identity ceiling. So the work still works, but the future version of you does not fit inside it anymore. That is not a crisis. It's just a signal. And signals are useful if you know what to listen for. So think about what a signal actually is in engineering terms. And sometimes you have to permit me because of my software engineering background. A signal is data. It is information coming from your system telling you something about its state. When your body feels pain, that's a signal. It does not mean you are broken. It means your system is telling you something needs attention. When you feel restless in a good situation, that's also a signal. It does not mean you are ungrateful. It means your system is telling you something is misaligned. The identity ceiling is just like that. Your present self is genuinely happy. The signal is real, but your future self is not compatible with the trajectory you are on. And your job right now is not to panic or quit. It is to understand what the signal is saying. Because once you understand the signal, you can actually do something strategic about it. Instead of just staying and hoping it changes or leaving and hoping for the best, you can actually navigate the transition with intention. The mistake I made back then was thinking I needed answers before I could move. I did not. What I needed was orientation to understand where I actually was and why this tension existed in the first place. Because here's the truth: you do not need certainty to start moving. You need clarity about where you are standing right now. Where you are standing, is it solid enough? Can you take the next step? Right. So, unfortunately, I spent months trying to figure out the perfect plan. What will I do if I left? How will I make money? How long will it take me? What if I failed? And I know a lot of you are also asking the same question. And the more I tried to answer those questions perfectly, the more paralyzed I became. Because the future is uncertain, and no amount of planning can make it certain. What I actually needed was a way to orient myself to the present moment, to understand the exact nature of this discomfort, to know whether it was an identity ceiling or something else, to see that the tension I was feeling was not a character flaw or a sign that I was ungrateful. It was rather a signal that I needed to update my operating system. Once I had that clarity, the decisions became easier. Remember, not easy, but what? Easier. Because I was no longer trying to solve the uncertainty. I was just trying to understand the present and then take the next small step from there. And that is what changes things. Not a perfect plan, not waiting for certainty, but understanding where you are standing and what the signal really means to you. That's exactly what the identity audit is designed for. It does not tell you what to do. It tells you where you are. It shows you the specific pattern you are in, whether you are in what I call an identity ceiling or something else entirely, because the discomfort you feel is real, but it might mean something different than you think. There are actually 4 different patterns that I have identified across all the people I've talked to who are experiencing this kind of tension. Some people feel like they are in a cage. They know what they want, but there are external constraints that are blocking them from moving. That is a different pattern than someone who is in an identity ceiling. Some people are clear on the future but completely misaligned with the present. That's also different. Some people are aligned with the present but have no idea what comes next. And some people are living exactly the life they designed, and they are either sustaining it or trying to optimize it. The identity audit identifies which pattern you are actually in, because if you are in an identity ceiling, as I've discussed, the strategy is different than if you are in, say, a cage. If you are clear on the future but misaligned with the present, you need different tools than if you have no clarity at all. The assessment takes about 15 minutes. You get a detailed profile that explains your specific pattern. You get a personalized first step based on where you actually are right now, and you get clarity on whether it is an identity ceiling or if something else is happening. The link is in the description. Before we wrap up, I want to address something that might be happening right now as you watch this. You might be thinking, but I have responsibilities. I have people depending on me. I cannot just leave. And that is real. That is important. And that is exactly why you need clarity. Because staying in something that does not fit you is not actually stable. It might feel stable, but it's not. Over time, if you stay in an identity ceiling for too long, you start to check out. You become present but not engaged. You go through the motions but you are actually not there. And that kind of slow disengagement is more destabilizing than you realize. Not for the job itself. They would find someone else, of course. They can easily replace you. But for the people around you who depend on your full presence. Because you cannot show up fully for others when you are operating in a role that no longer fits. So getting clarity is not selfish. It's actually the most responsible thing you can do. It is saying, I care about doing this well, and I care about the people around me. So I need to understand what this tension is and what it means. and then you can make a real decision. Remember, we're talking about clarity about the presence. So maybe you decide to stay and make peace with it, and that is a valid choice. Maybe you decide to stay but start building something else on the side. That's also valid. Maybe you decide to leave and transition strategically. That is also valid. But whatever you decide from clarity, not from fog. And that makes all the difference. You're not wrong for liking your job. You're not wrong for questioning it either. Both can be true at the same time. In the next video, I'll show you why waiting for perfect clarity actually makes this phase last much longer than it needs to. Because clarity is not something you find, it's something you build through small experiments and small evidence. And the sooner you start building it, the sooner you can make a real decision. See you there. Welcome to the lab.